Hello, before we get to the Peloponnesian War, as well as Philip the Second of Macedonia and Alexander the Great, we're going to take a moment and look at Greek tragedy. So, as we think of classical Greek theater, we think of classical Greek theater as the ancestor of Western dramas. It was very different from the modern stage, and what we know as Greek drama comes from the surviving works of the Athenian playwrights such as Aeschylus and Sophocles and Euripides, who used figures from mythology to explore the contemporary and the political issues of the day. This mirrored on philosophical trends of the day, such where the sophists like Socrates turned their attention from the natural world to the abstract issues like the human behavior, ethics, politics, history, and psychology. And so we're going to look at a little bit about classical Greek theater. The theater prior to what is known as classical Greek theater ended up dealing with it was very different. The beginning of Greek theater ended up only having one person on stage, and then you would have a chorus. Everything that was a battle or something was acted away from it. All males were actors, and they would have masks, and so that one person would portray every person. By the time you get to the classical period, you get an addition of multiple actors on stage as well as having the chorus. And again, all actors were male, and they used these stylized masks to do everything. There was very little way of props or scenery, and anytime there was some kind of battle or something, they would step off stage and talk about the battle, and then come on and be like, "Oh, and this person died," and that's the kind of how tragedy worked at this time. The 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 theatrical performances in ancient Athens was very different experience today. There was much less acting and performing, more like chanting lines and physical action was all done off stage. Um, it was trying to be more stylized in tone and not really as naturalistic. Importance of feature of Greek theater was the chorus, about a dozen actors who sang complementary to the play's events, and the earliest plays as I said, consisted of one actor. The key moment in the development of Greek theater came when a second actor was introduced, because then you had dialogue possible. And throughout Greek theater during the classical period, you never have more than three actors on the stage at once. However, with three actors, you get more speaking lines, as well as with two, you get dialogues. So the Greek plays were performed at religious festivals that were staged to watch to honor the gods. Athens put on a state-sponsored religious festival known as the Dionysa, after the Greek god Dionysus, who was the god of wine and theater, also known as Bacchus, if you was also, but this is the Dionysa, was a theatrical contest. So what happened is each year all the playwrights would perform three plays to sorry yeah three tragic plays and one comedy satire, and then after there were three playwrights that were chosen from the playwrights of Greece. They performed three tragic plays and one comedic satire, and the satire was not actually part of the tragic cycle. It was seen as pretty much like a break. So after you went through the deeply tragic plays, then you had some comedy before you went home. And it was very crude and had humor and dancing and singing. So we're going to be talking about a few of the playwrights and some of their famous plays, as they're not all their plays. And so in the 5th century Athens, tragedy was the most important. It wasn't just the beginning of Western theatrical tradition, but it also functioned for society. It told of the mythologies, but also what is going on. What are the fundamental questions of that age? Tragedy became a mechanism by which the Greeks questioned the fundamental values that they confronted their deepest fears. It showed Greeks, particularly Athenians, as willingness to challenge the status quo and consider new thinking. One of the Athenian greatest authors was Aeschylus, and he won the first prize at 13 Dionysius. He wrote. He also fought at the battle. Sorry, he fought at the Battle of Marathon. He was very proud of the fact that he said on his tombstone that he didn't want to be known for his plays. He wanted to be known that he fought at the Battle of Marathon. His most famous play is known as the Oresteia. It is a play that has different cycles of life, and the characteristic of this play is that one bad deed leads to another, and causing a change of interrelated disasters. And over the course of the Oresteia, we witness a father killing his daughter, then leads to his wife killing her husband, that leads to a son killing his mother. And the play poses the question, how can we stop such terrible violence once it has already begun? Despite the rather bleak plot description, the ending of the cycles are always positive, because as a result of these tragedies, the first law court is established in Athens, or the play assessed that human rulings of justice is brought into society. The next person we're going to look at is Sophocles, and he wrote 123 plays, of which only 7 have survived. And he won the Dionysia 18 times and never placed worse than second. And his most famous is the Antigone, which I almost assigned for class. In this play, it's a woman about woman, Antigone, wants a proper burial for her recently deceased brother, and she can't bury him because the king has called her brother a traitor because he wasn't fighting on the king's side. So she is in this conflict between doing the duty to her family versus the state laws, doing the duty of the state. And on top of that, she is actually engaged to the king's son. And what ends up happening is that she goes off and buries her brother, and the king condemns her to death. She hangs herself, and the king's son commits suicide. And which in then turns the king's wife commits suicide, and so on. And so there's all these problems. So the play actually tackles a very big question for the Greeks, and that is, the basic question is every society and every individual must struggle with, and that is for the good of the state versus the whole, the good of the state as a whole versus the individual rights. Does the individual owe greater allegiance to the society or to his or her family? What happens when religious beliefs conflict with law? And this is pretty much at the foundations of the Antigone, is what should you do? And this is a question that is constantly asked. This is a question that we are still grappling with. Is the society as a whole more important as the individual? The next play and playwright we're going to be looking at is Euripides. And Euripides was the youngest of the 3 playwrights. He was the most melodramatic. Of the 3, he's the least popular, only winning the Dionysia 4 times. And his themes tend to be extreme emotional. And one of his most famous plays is the Medea. And the protagonist of the Medea is Medea. She's a woman who's foreigner, not a Greek. And Medea is extremely intelligent, and she's a powerful sorceress. And before the play begins, we know that she falls in love with the Greek hero Jason. And Jason has forsaken all else to be with her, including everything. He abandons her family, he betrays his country, he kills his own brother. And as the play opens, Jason declares that he has decided to leave Medea and marry a Greek princess. So how will how will a woman who has given up everything for love? Sorry, she gives up everything for love. I'm sorry. Jason doesn't kill everyone. Sorry. Medea gives up everything to love. She is the one who sacrificed she abandoned her family, she kills her brother, and she betrays her country. So she's given up everything for the person he loves, and he's just going to go run off with another girl. And so how is she supposed to deal with the man that she spurs? So Medea chooses revenge. And she decides it's not simply enough to kill Jason. She wants to make him suffer. She begins by murdering Jason's new bride in a very gruesome fashion. She accidentally kills the girl's father as well. And she makes Jason suffer. And at the end of this, she has 2 kids with Jason. Medea does. She kills her 2 sons to make Jason pay. So the question, it's a very dark poem, play. And in this, the underlying themes include like Greek men's fear of women and this paranoia about foreigners, and it challenges Greek self-image and rationalism. What could drive a mother to kill her own children is asked in this play. Now, this we're going to talk a little bit about plays that are in the Hellenistic period too, because since we're talking about Greek tragedies, and the one of the Hellenistic poets their playwrights of the time is Menander. And Menander actually writes one of the first comedies, not a satire, but a full comedy. And this comedy is known as The Curmudgeon, which still survives. We have texts from other plays from Menander, but not as much. And The Curmudgeon is a really funny story of an old man and his ordinary life. It's kind of what we'd view as a sitcom today. It has, it's not really high comedy. It's very crude and whatnot, but it's one of the first Greek comedies that we have. And as I had mentioned in class, that tragedy is the ultimate form of Greek playwrights, but Menander is the first comic. Another Hellenistic epic that comes out of this is the literary form of the Argonautica, which is about circa 295 BC. And this is the journey of the Argos by the Apollonios of Rhodes, and it's a story that is written as an epic on epic scale, and it's not an epic of Jason and the Argonauts. It's a cunning story of great love of interest between Jason and Medea, and Jason's strong, brazen spontaneity, and Medea who gets him out of those problems. She is the brains and he is the bronze, and this is verse, not in prose, and it's very universal because it kind of deals with not only moral but ethical issues. It's really showing the divide in Greece itself between brawn and brains. And so this kind of is a brief look into Greek playwrights and how it's really important to understand because they grapple with the problems of the day. They grapple with normal things. It's just as if we were watching a TV show and you're given this great question and you're trying to figure out. This is the same for the Greeks at the time. So I hope you enjoyed Greek tragedy.